Brothers and sisters, welcome back to my channel, and today we're gonna have a sort of meta discussion. So, we had two major events this past week, the NAWCQ and the European WCQ, and there are some decks that performed very well, some decks that did not perform at all. So, we're gonna have a discussion about which decks are the best decks, which flex spots are the best flex spots, and some sleeper picks maybe for the upcoming format. Also, remember to ring the bell, because so you can be notified when my next video is gonna drop, and to follow, to like, to subscribe, and to send some kisses in the comment section. That would be appreciated. So, let's start with in the European WCQ. Obviously, the most performing and the best deck that we had around was Kilon. Now, talking about Kilon, I think it's kind of solved if we talk about like the deck itself. Like if we go over the team list, it's as standard as it can get. It's very similar, or if it's actually the same as Yuna deck list, with the exception of one Pot of Desires and a card that I was not really sure about, Magnamut in the main deck. When I did theorize over Magnamut in the main deck, especially talking about flex spots in general, the thing about Magnamut felt extremely uneasy, because like having the option to play Magnamut in the main deck felt extremely uneasy because it's a very good card going second, but it's an extremely unplayable card going first, right? So it generates this discrepancy, in my opinion, of how much a card can be good when you go first and when you go second. And I was like, okay, at that point, why don't we play it in the side deck, right? And that's how I felt about Magnum. I was a fan at the start. I was actually a fan of Magnamut in the main deck at the very start. Then someone asked me a question, Nash, but is a Magnamut dead when you go first? I was like, you know what? You might be right. But then you would say the same about other cards, right? Like Harmonia. Harmonia is Harmonia, Magnamut is Magnamut. So, like, there is not much to discuss about it. I mean, for the rest, in my opinion, for the exception of the one Pot of Desire, the list of team is as standard as it can get, to be honest. And my issue is, okay, so how do we counter this deck? There is no much of a counter when your opponent is extremely versatile and good at the game, because it's a deck that has 20 non-engine, and it's impossible for the deck basically to break. Close to impossible. I don't want to say impossible, otherwise people are gonna be in the comment section, Nash, but I bricked on Kilon. Yeah, okay, so there are some counter picks, okay? There are some counter picks. One of them is Branded, that we also saw it performing during the European WCQ. Branded got actually 2 spots in top 4, with, in my opinion, 2 very different deck lists. If we go over those, like, it's very extremely different deck list, because there is one that plays the new package, which is the Golden Sword Soul, and there is one that does not. There is one that plays Mercurier, and there is one that does not. There is one that plays Pot of Slot, and there is one that does not play it in the main deck. So it's 2 very different approaches, showing that Branded can be played in several different ways, and there is not an established sauce for it, right? Like, it's not as standard as Kilon, right? It's not as easy as it can get for Kilon, in which, like, the only thing that you have to decide is what? 3 flex spots. Talking about the Branded deck list, how can I not mention the Francesco Simoncelli that's going towards using the Golden Sword Soul strategy, because he utilizes the 3 Brave Sword Soul in order to make a full end board. Now, talking about the combo of the Sword Soul, we need to discuss the rotation. Why was he playing the Golden Sword? First of all, there are, in my opinion, two main reasons of why this card has been played in the deck, and the first one is it's very hard to kill when you can set up a Sword Soul rotation. It's an extremely hard thing to do, like especially like if your handbot is not as strong, you can set up a Night Spirit to protect yourself, because it's a sort of battle fader. And in Branded, even though you could say, okay, Nash, it's the battle fader, like come on, we are in 2026. In Branded, with the amount of follow-up and pushes that the deck can create the next turn, if I survive, or if the Branded player survives one turn against a Killer Toon, usually Killer Toon does not win the grind. I would say that if Killer Toon does not kill Branded, 90% of the time Branded wins that game. Maybe too much, 85. But we are at a very high range in which Branded actually, on the crackback, if it survives, it wins. Like, it's extremely easy. I don't think there is an easy lock for a Cure Toon to win the grind against the Branded. It's extremely difficult if it comes to that. Something that, in my opinion, you should be like sit there calculating for like 30-40 minutes only how you wanna end it, which is not possible in it's not possible on the table, it's not possible on paper. It's not something that you can do every time without getting like a warning for slow playing. I don't think anyone can calculate this fast how you have to end, considering the amount of follow-up, the knowledge, the rotations that Branded has. Like, you need to be extremely familiar with the Branded matchup if you are a Kultun player. And usually if you are familiar with the Branded deck, you kind of want to play Branded, because activating Fallen and the White Dragon. Wabaz. Okay, so why Golden Swords? Let's talk about the rotation. It's extremely simple. Activate Fallen and White in hand, special summon itself, send Titanic Lad. Depending on your end, you might send Titanic Lad, or you might send either Albion or the Dogmatica. The Dragon that devours the Dogma. Special summon it. Summon from the deck Ecclesia, the Incredible Ecclesia. Then activate Incredible Ecclesia, because Incredible Ecclesia can also summon a Sword Soul monster from the deck. Yeah, I know, right? Hidden text. Summon the Golden Sword Soul. Use the Wabaz and Golden Sword Soul in order to make Ecclesia and the Dark Dragon. Activate Ecclesia and the Dark Dragon in order to summon Quem. And then it's gonna be Chainlink 1 Quem to send, Chainlink 2 Golden Sword Soul in order to revive the Incredible Ecclesia. Quem is gonna send the Kit. Kit is gonna summon back Wabaz. And then you're gonna use both, at this point, if you guys are following, we have a Quem, we have a Fallen and White, and we have a Incredible Ecclesia on the field. Then we're gonna use Incredible Ecclesia and Fallen and White in order to summon. I usually summon it in the extra monster zone, the three champions of Sword Soul. And then it's gonna be Chainlink 1 Quem to Reborn, Chainlink 2 3 champions in order to add Cartesia. And then we add Cartesia, and then we special summon back Wabaz. Then we special summon Cartesia by his own effect. And then we use, and here the line difference like differs from what you send from Wabaz, because if we send Dogma, we're gonna use Cartesia with Wabaz and the three champions to make Albion, and then Albion can banish Wabaz and the three champions from the graveyard to make Jade, and then Dogma can add the Fallen and White in order then to use it on the Albion on the field and send Titanic Lad that can set up an Albaz in hand and an FMV or Retribution set. Or if you already have a good rotation in your hand, because you open maybe a Servant, or you open at an opening, or you have already Fallen and White, you might go directly for a Jade in that situation. But that's how usually it works. And that's one card combo that gives you an entire setup of Mirror Jade on top, Quem, Cartesia, and a spell or trap branded that you decide what you want it to be. That can be Fab or can be Retribution. And that's usually how it gets. Or again, depending, like if you make an Albion into Jade and you have Fab, you can also send the Dogma if you didn't send Dogma previously, but because you send Titanic Lad, because sending Titanic Lad is generically better. From Wabas, the shit plays into Fua extremely bad, so usually you don't want to send Titanic Lad, you want to send one in between Dogma or in between the Albion. If you expect a draw in the main deck, will be Albion. If you have a very weak hand, will be Dogma, because usually Dogma, if your Albas get interrupted, you can add the Fallen and the Virtues and pop your own Albas to set up another Fallen and the Virtues. And with Albas in the graveyard, the Fallen and the Virtues that you are gonna activate in the opponent turn will send Ripple. Now, enough chit-chat about this combo. I did personally like the choice of Pot of Slot, because the issue of the deck is not drawing Super Poly going second. If you draw Super Poly, every board that feels uncrackable suddenly becomes the easiest shit to play against. If you resolve one Super Poly in branded, is gonna clear the entire board. And there is a tech in especially Simoncelli deck list, but let me see if yeah, in Simoncelli deck list there is a tech, but also in the Paul Robert Goss there is actually also there are two techs that we need to discuss about. Okay, the first one that I want to discuss about is a card that you guys have seen on stream many times this weekend, because there was an Invoked player, Danilo, who did an extremely impressive run in the playoff, and the card that we are going to talk about today is going to be Hyper Invoked Ion. This card is genuinely disgusting. Now, you guys, if you guys were following, you already know what it does. It basically, if you use 3 fusion materials for the summon of this card, the fusion materials are fusion monsters with different attributes, can banish 3 cards on the field not targeting, can banish 3 cards in the extra deck by looking at your opponent's extra deck. This card was being played by Simoncelli, and how do you set it up? It's a theory. The theory was summoning Mixosia in the branded strategy, utilizing Cartesia, and ending on Mixosia, or like utilizing Cartesia and the opponent to summon Mixosia. And then use the Mixosia in order to banish. If you summon it in the opponent turn, you're gonna use Mixosia to banish itself and a Grand Wignol, a Quertis, a Lubellion that you sent off Jade, and you have an Hyperion Invoked Ion for 2. If you summon Mixosia in your own turn, something extremely nice happens, because Mixosia has another effect. You can target a face-up monster on the field and declare an attribute, and it becomes that attribute. Period. It's not until the end of the turn. So you summon Mixosia in your turn with the branded, utilizing Cartesia instead of summoning Jade, because you can always have access to Jade easily later on. And then you call Wind, or call like whichever attribute your heart desires. Except, please, no light, because that would be extremely taunting. They call Divine, because this card is Divine. And then in the opponent turn, now you have a Divine, that's Mixosia, plus a light and a dark in the graveyard. The dark is very easy to accomplish. It's an Albion, it's a Titanic Lad, it's whatever. And then the light can be Lubellion, or can be Grand Wignol, you probably have sent with Off-Eye Spirits. Yeah, and you have an Hyperior for 3, and the Hyperior for 3 means look at your opponent extra deck, banish 3 cards, and your opponent cannot play around it, because it's a 3-off. You know? Extremely disgusting card. And for the other Despia decklist that we are talking about, the Paul Robert Gosso, he was playing the pot of slot in the side deck, which obviously, in my opinion, it's a mandatory card to be played in almost every deck. I would probably even play it in Killer Tune because the card is that good. He was still playing the Mixosia, which in my opinion is an extremely good card generally speaking, but he was summoning Secretarion, which is not bad. Definitely not a bad take. Definitely not a bad take. I mean, you could also go for, then there is also another card, Borrelord Furious, but not very convinced about it, and he was also playing Stapilia. But Stapilia is also, I'm not very convinced about. Stapilia is interesting, especially in a Kultun format, because you can make a level 3-1 in order to mess up with their level, but I don't think it works extremely well in general. So, we spoke about Kultun. We spoke about, interesting about Kultun, I guess I can touch upon on that, was the DD Crow. I think it was for the Light and Darkness ritual. And talking about Light and Darkness, I think it's time to touch the pawn on Light and Dark. Talking about the Joshua decklist, I don't hate it. I think it was fine. I really like Setting Mystic. I think one of the few reasons why I would play this deck is because I can draw 3 cards. And I am a huge fan of the Waba's engine. The only thing that, in my opinion, should have been, I mean, he probably took it in consideration and decided not to go for it, but the bridge. I think the bridge is kinda needed in this deck. You don't have that many starters, and I understand by seeing the Fallen of Albas, the black one, that he wanted to make the Fallen and the White playing on his own, but my main concern is the fact that, okay, now you have, it's a theory that I did apply to several decklists as well, is, okay, I draw only Fallen and White, but I do not have good entraps to back it up, which means I'm gonna play only Fallen and White. And the Fallen and White rotation, it's just a worse branded rotation if you do not play the bricks associated with the card. So you cannot really set up a very strong board, and it's very easy to crack, and you do not have an infinite rotation because you're not playing branded. So I do prefer personally the bridge, and also in my opinion bridges is the key of every mixed deck. And I did try this strategy in several decks. I did try it in Blitzkrieg. I did try it in this deck as well, and I felt extremely uneasy when I could not bridge into the other archetype. For the rest, I do really like the list, and for the 2 Fallen and the Virtues, I think the card is broken. I probably like the 3 off, but that's a personal opinion on the matter. For the 3 Celting, I don't judge him for that. The card is good. The card is good. And the ruling about this card made me actually question myself, especially because it says tribute this card on the field, and you can special summon a ritual from your hand, right? And I was like, okay, but it doesn't say ignoring summoning conditions. So I'm like, I don't know if the card even works. I heard that it works, and I did double checking, and it actually works. It's just very weird wording. I like the School Archery of Chaos, to be honest, as a 2-off. It makes totally sense. I like the Ritual at 1 because that shit is a brick. The Mind Shuffle at 2 is basically mandatory. And the Chaos Magical Art in the side deck, I think it's an extremely spotted choice. I was trying it in the main deck for the longest time until I realized that there was a ruling that didn't work. Because I did prep some friends for the European WCQ. I was prepping, I was coaching someone, and one of them is actually going towards, which I'm very happy with, Simoncelli. And I mean, the magical art was in the main deck at the very start, at the very first draft of the deck, but there was a ruling that was not working because I did not realize it at the very start when the cards came out. So you do summon those 3 spells from the deck, right? And I used to set it like, let's assume that I did, or like if I open like Black House and Grifo together, right? I would go Grifo set Magical Art, Black House plays Mind Shuffle in order to play around Ash Blossom, or in order to play around Ash Blossom usually, because Droll you could check if you just play with Grifo and draw face. So what I was gonna do, like what I was doing was, okay, activate Mind Shuffle, blah blah blah, and my opponent activates Ash Blossom, I activate Magic, like, no, I can't even use that. I probably have to summon Celtic Guardian. Would be like a combination of 3 damn cards. Like summon Celtic Guardian, set up a Magical Art, with both Grifo and Black House, activate Magical Art, set the Celtic Guardian and other 3 monsters on the field with the Mind Shuffle, and I thought that Mind Shuffle could bounce back those set monsters in my hand, so I had a free spell in my hand. I would have like a free Super Poly, a free talent in my hand, in order to summon then like a soldier, or to summon a Black House, Black Cluster, so like Black House, yeah. It didn't work like that, unfortunately. You cannot bounce set monsters. Obscure rulings. Why the fuck would you make that shit level 8? It's because then I asked, obviously. I was like, I need to ask the judges why. It's because if you flip it, now it's level 8 token that you can bounce back. If you flip it, you can bounce it back. If it's set, you cannot. Huh. Very interesting. And also another issue that I had with the Magical Arts, especially in the main deck, is the fact that I would clog myself. Too many monsters on the field. And then if I Magical Art, I cannot... Harmonia, I could not do anything, basically. So, what Joshua did was obviously not playing the Witch stuff, but I was playing Harmonia instead. The combo is basically the same with Harmonia and Grifo, because you would Harmonia your opponent, then you Grifo set up the Mind Shuffle bounce back Harmonia and summon the Ritual, which is broken, which is genuinely broken. You have a Banish, plus the Harmonia, plus the Shuffle setup. Broken. Which is the same thing that happened when I was testing also the Witch stuff, right? Like the Black Witch stuff, because you would activate Mind Shuffle would add the school, pitch the Witch summon itself, pitch the school send for cost the Ritual, add the Soldier in hand, and if your opponent activates or does something, you have the Witch that set up obviously a follow-up piece, and then you have the Witch in hand that can exchange herself for the Soldier that banish 1 on the field, and that was it. Like, that was extremely good as well, but it's way better with Harmonia, because we are talking about an Harmonia game that can set up a double interruptions and stuff. The only thing, I mean, maybe something that I would have taken in consideration, probably with Lulua Lilith, the OG Ecclesia was good. And it's interesting to see the fact that he's playing actually an extremely good card in the deck, which is Faria, the Primordial Goddess, which is again something that I did test already. This card is broken, and he adds it with the 3 champions, which makes sense. But I mean, again, like, I do really think that a bridge is needed in those kind of deck lists, especially if you play so much branded stuff. And unfortunately, both in the European and both in the North American WCQ, we didn't see really any Light and Darkness in the top 8, and no Blitzkey in the top 8, but there was a deck that was standing out, especially for one player in particular. That was Danilo Siracusa, and that's Invoked. Now, the strategy of Invoked is in my opinion, extremely simple, like in the grand scheme of things, on how the deck wants to win the game. It summons Oceanus, and it set up and then it sets up an Ion in order to clear the opponent extra deck, sometimes a Caliga, depending if you have enough materials, or an Elysium. We don't see the trap in the main deck in the deck list of Danilo, but we see it in the side deck, which is the Gamma Summon, that can set up like an easier Elysium, basically. That's the main point. And then we got the Endymion stuff with the Artemis Moon Maiden. You guys know how much I love the Magistus cards, and it's simply to get the Crowley on the field, and the Crowley can use effect in order to fusion summon, because it's treated as an Eyelester while it's on the field, and it can set up an easy Oceanus. No, one second, doesn't really set up an easy Oceanus. It's probably for Mekaba, my bad. It sets up a Mekaba that protects your plays. So basically every push becomes a crossout, because how does it work is, like, every of those cards is either an extender or like a main line of play, and if one main line of play resolves, you have Mekaba. If it doesn't, you can use the extender to get to your main line of play. And this is how basically the deck works. For the Sword in the main deck as a 3-off, this card is an extremely good card. I'm not personally sure if it's a 3-off or a 2-off, but for sure it's more than a 1-off. For the rest, the deck seems extremely good in my opinion. I like the 5 Chummies, I like the Ash Blossom, I like the Drolleys. Personal decisions. I think it's fine. I like the Shifter. This one, again, this one is weird, but I can probably see why it worked out for him. The Swamp was, like, talking about the Sorcerer of the Swamp, it's kinda weird, but I can see why it worked out for him. I already saw the deck list, like, I already saw the deck profile, and like, he did explain a lot of stuff regarding the deck. You probably should check it out. It was an impressive run, both in the playoff and in the WCQ itself, and it's definitely a deck to look out for, because might be actually a new tier 1 contender, or was simply a meta call and then worked out for him. Bot Day sounds crazy though, so it's probably a tier 1 contender, if that did so well. There were also other people on the deck that did not perform as well as Danilo, but I still think the deck needs to be studied more. Because it's an extremely interesting deck. For Elf Note, unfortunately, I mean, it's an FTK deck, right? Like, Elf Note, when it goes first, it's an FTK, but I did find a very interesting approach to Elf Note that I didn't see many people play. And also the people that topped did not play it. Now, we were talking about the chess cards. In the past, we were talking about the chess cards, so now they mesh very well with Elf Notes. I was like, no, the chess card, after testing them for 10 days, like 1 week, I would say 1 week, not 10 days. After testing them for 1 week straight, I did realize that the chess cards are dog shit. Simply dog shit. Why? Because you activate them in the opponent turn. If they have a removal, you just lost a card and an entire setup, and you're playing bricks in your deck and the extra deck. If it does resolve, it's not even that broken. If you don't play 20 entraps meshed in the deck, when you go first, the card is a brick, so E4 is definitely not good. But there was a card that, in my opinion, stood out of the entire chess engine, which is Witness. It's Witness and is the Null Gainer, the Synchro 8 Null Gainer and Witness. In my opinion, you could simply play those two cards. And it's possibly one brick in the Elf Note deck, but I don't even think it's that bad of a brick. I would say it's an half brick, because if you have any synchro in the graveyard, you can special summon it, and it does its thing. You just place any synchro in the spell and trap zone, and you summon a token level 1, and you get a free Tzolk'in, and you get a free Crocodile. So I think I would still play the Witness of the Ancient in Elf Note as a one-off. You do not play any chess card. You play Tzolk'in and Null Gainer in the extra deck, and then you would be like, okay, Nash, I wanna do that, but how do you trigger Tzolk'in at that point, because you are not searching for the chess card? Well, the Elf Note Power Patreon can add an Elf Note spell or trap as well. Let it sit it with you. There are combos. I did already all of them. They all work. You get free Tzolk'in, free Croco, and a card to sack off the welcome mode. You sack the Tzolk'in, and you get a free body as well. It's a huge plus. I don't think Elf Note should be played without the Witness, in my opinion. Even though the deck is not half bad at all, like, I actually don't think the deck is bad, it just feels like a worse killer tune at that point. Really, except for the Light and Darkness in top 16, we didn't have any Blitzkrieg in any top, actually. The deck did not perform well at all, and that's extremely sad. Another deck that fall out, the deck did not perform well at all. We could talk about like top 64 Muselli with Blitzkrieg. I guess we can talk about that. It's probably the only one. Lorenzo Muselli 64 Blitzkrieg. Talking about this deck, I'm gonna make a video about the gameplay of this deck and now why I do genuinely like this deck a lot. Hope you guys appreciated my deep dive into the format right now, and I'll see you next time.